Today's project features heat embossing and sponging. You can see the shiny heat embossing there on my Season's Greetings. And we're using the Snowflake Sentiments stamp set. When I demonstrated this card, I gave people the option to use some of the sentiments in this colorful season stamp set, so it could be a more neutral winter-themed card, not just for the holidays. So the card that I'm sharing with you today was one of the cards that we did at my Creative Escape Day as part of the winter-themed card class. So for this project, I used the largest oval in the stitched shapes framelets, and I'm just going to run it through the big shot. And it's sometimes a little bit hard to get the piece of cardstock out, and you can see I just pushed my finger right up towards the edge of the framelit to sort of help it out. And now I'm going to ink up my Season's Greetings with my Versamark, and I heat embossed with silver embossing powder off camera, and here's the end result. So now I'm going to go ahead and start my embossing of my snowflakes in the background. And the first thing I did was use my embossing buddy to make sure that the paper wasn't staticky and that little particles of the embossing powder don't stick where they don't belong. And I did my stamping of my large snowflake first, and now I'm doing the second largest snowflake. And then I'll come back in with the third snowflake in the stamp set, which is actually a string of 3 images. You can see it there. Now I didn't want to stamp the string, so I'm just inking up one of the 3 snowflakes carefully with the stamp facing up so I can see where I'm getting the ink, and just repeatedly inking just that one and putting it here and abouts as I desire. All right, so now I'm dipping it in the white embossing powder, or shoveling it into, I guess, tapping it off with my finger to get the excess off. And I'm going to come in with my heat tool to melt the embossing powder. And if you haven't seen embossing before, it melts the embossing powder and it becomes shiny and raised. And embossing powders come in lots of different colors. I most often use silver and gold and white and sometimes clear. So this is where this project really comes to life, because I'm going to start sponging. This technique is technically called an emboss resist, because when you emboss, the embossing powder actually resists the ink. So I'm sponging over each of the snowflakes, and I started with my Night of Navy, and then I came in with my Marina Mist, and now the third color I'm using is Emerald Envy. And I'm just trying to apply the color in various spots to kind of mix it up. And I generally play with my sponging for a while just to work on blending the colors and getting a nice balance of the colors in various spots on the piece. So you'll see me continuing to come back in. And I also like to make the color in the center of the image or the snowflake a little bit darker, and then allow it to kind of fade towards the outer edges of the image, in this case, of course, snowflakes. So as I mentioned earlier, this is called an emboss resist, and so that means that the ink is actually going to be sitting on the surface of those white images, and it's absorbed into the paper, of course, but it's sitting on the surface, and so it's important that you wipe the excess off. So I just took a spray bottle with some water in it, sprayed my paper towel just ever so lightly, and now I'm just rubbing off the excess ink that's sitting on the surface. And when you do that, it makes it much more crisp looking, and you also prevent that ink from coming off on your clothes or somewhere where you don't want it to come off. So there's my final piece. So now, of course, on fast speed, I'm just putting some dimensionals on the back side of my focal piece and taking off the backings. And I did actually considered putting this on a white card base as well. So I kind of wanted to show you that as well, just kind of see what it looked like before I attached it to the blue. So you'll see here in a second, I just kind of laid out the pieces. I think it looked really pretty on white as well. I used a white strip at the bottom for an example that I did with it on the white. In the end, I settled on putting it on the Night of Navy cardstock. As you can see, I'm finishing up the card now. So I'm going to start with putting some adhesive on the back side of the oval sentiment piece, and I'm justifying it up towards the top of the vellum cardstock so I leave enough room on the bottom for my, my little strip. So I'm going to put glue dots on the back of my Night of Navy strip in 3 different spots, and I'm going to go ahead and attach that to the vellum as a first step, just to kind of get my spacing. So my Night of Navy strip is justified about 1/4 of an inch off the edge of the left side of the vellum cardstock. And I like to do these steps first because when you attach the vellum to the card base, you you can usually see adhesive through the back side of the vellum. So you want to put the adhesive in spots that are hidden, which is what I'm doing now. And I also put some rhinestones in the upper corner of my vellum, and you can see I'm putting a glue dot right in behind that rhinestone again, so it will be hidden, and I'm putting them down in behind the navy strip, of course, for the same reason. And then I can go ahead and place that whole focal element onto my card. So for my last step, I'm just putting a clear faceted gem on the lower left-hand corner of where the vellum and the navy strip cross. And there's my finished card. I hope you like it. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today, and I hope you'll come back soon. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a great day. Happy crafting!